Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey, good evening, my friends, and it's good to be with you again. Great to have you along. Another episode of the Dynamic Dilettante, and tonight we're going to be celebrating the anniversary of the Wrath of. That's you.
That's my cue.
We were just talking about it. You and I were just talking about it. Yeah, the Wrath of KHAAAN, which is one of my, honestly, it's one of my all-time favorite flicks. As much as I love Batman, we've talked a lot about Batman. As you, sadly, well know, I was really, really jazzed when I heard that movie was coming out for release again later this year. And it's as if I haven't seen it enough times. I gotta go again. So I'm pretty excited. How many times did you and I watch it over the weekend? At least twice.
Yeah, it's been twice this weekend for sure, I think. Because I just randomly watched it Friday, and then you decided.
And then I watched it, I watched it on Sunday, I think, and took some notes. So I probably have got like way more notes than we actually want to share, but there's a lot of great stuff in regard to the Wrath of KHAAAN. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. And going back and watching it again, there are little things that don't hold up. There's a scene where it's very 1980s. David, who is Kirk's son, comes out wearing a sweater wrapped around his neck and over his shoulders. And I'm like, that is so 1980, you know? So there are things like that in the film, but it has not taken away any of my entertainment of that movie over the years. It's one that I enjoy. So we were going to break down. We've got some photos that we'll share with you, kind of going through the film, just touching on it a little bit. Nicholas Meyer talked about this for those who have the director's edition of Star Trek II, The Wrath of KHAAAN. Nicholas Meyer is the director of Star Trek II. And he said they for that movie, they had 5 different scripts that they kind of cobbled together. They said there were 5 things. One was Kirk meets his son. Number 2 was the Genesis planet. Number 3 was the death of Spock. Number 4 was Khan. And number 5 was Savick. Those were all things that they wanted to introduce. They said, these are the 5 elements that we want to get into the movie. And so what they did was they came up with, they took pieces of scripts and cobbled them all together. And Nicholas Meyer did what he does best, which is, along with Harv Bennett, who's the executive producer, wove all of that together in what is, I think, a pretty compelling, fascinating story. And the movie starts out, Nicholas Meyer says his father doesn't know Star Trek. So at the beginning of Star Trek starts in the 23rd century. You see that in the 23rd century. It's the only film where they tell you it's actually in the 23rd century. And Meyer said, that's because my father knew nothing about Star Trek. So I put that in there for him. And the opening shot we see comes out on Spock. And he said, one of the things to me, see, this is one of the things that I thought was great about Star Trek 2. Nicholas Meyer is not a Star Trek fan. He's not a guy like me who grew up on Star Trek, loves Star Trek, just consumed Star Trek all the time. Nicholas Meyer was not that guy. And he said the one thing he knew about Star Trek was Spock's pointed ear. So he wanted to start the movie. And that's one of the first things you see is a pretty close shot of Leonard Nimoy and zooming out, and you see him with his head turned, looking at his console, and you see Spock's ear. So that's how Wrath of KHAAAN starts, and it builds up a lot of climax, a lot of great things. Starts with the simulator scene. One of the big rumors of Wrath of KHAAAN, word had gotten out, and it's believed that Gene Roddenberry, the original creator of Star Trek, is the guy who leaked it out, was that Spock would die. And we'll talk more about this later on. I got a Nicholas Meyer'S talked about it in detail. Roddenberry, I think, believed that he was going to torpedo that idea of what was going on with Spock. So he leaked it that Spock was going to die. So what Nicholas Meyer did, in what I think is a real brainstorm, is they created a simulator scene at the beginning of the movie. And you can see that, and we'll start with our photos. I don't know if you got them up. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. The simulator scene at the beginning of the movie. And he thought, we'll kill Spock in the simulator scene, and then everybody will go, oh, well, that's what all the fuss was about, huh? I mean, and then they'll forget about it, which is exactly what happened. Spock gets killed in that simulator scene, and then of course he gets up, he's fine, everything's okay, and the movie goes on. So it's I think it's one of the did you just run that? I see you run that. Yeah. That's all right. That's all right.
We've worked on improving some stuff.
So anyway, I almost hate to go through all of this stuff because there's a lot that's going on. Nicholas Meyer talked about the fact that we'll get to this in a moment. The as we get through those, let me see, where are we at with photos here, sweetheart?
Pick whatever one you want.
Let's go to the number 15.
We've got kind of an archaic system of trying to find. We got it.
Is the as I love the simulator scene, and it was, unfortunately, I knew that was coming because I had read some materials online, and I knew that was coming. Oh yeah, that's when Kirk opens up the view screen, opens up, and you realize it's not a view screen, it's actually a door, and Kirk you see standing behind there with the light up behind, and reveals that it was all just a simulation. Spock then, of course, wakes up, and we are off and running. Number 29 is the next one. There is a great scene then between Kirk and Spock as after the simulation scene, where Kirk has received a book from Spock for his birthday. And the book is pivotal in the movie, comes up several different times. And there's a beautiful scene of the two of them out in, there it is. And you can see it. This looks like a really incredible set that they created. What you don't realize is there is a 3-foot model in front of the camera that makes it look, that big glass terrarium and all of the plants hanging down, all of that stuff. It looks like that's actually on the set. It's not. What they did was they built that, they put it right in front of the camera, and then they shot Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner through that piece. Those are the kinds of tricks that they did, before you start getting into all the digital stuff they're doing on media and in film now. I love that kind of filmmaking where you're using real materials to create the film, and this film is just full of them. So that simulator scene gets us off to a pretty big bang. Which is one of the reasons that I loved it. This movie really focuses on Admiral Kirk. He says, it's his birthday. So he talks about that, it being his birthday. He has, of course, lost his command. He's lost the Enterprise. Spock is commanding the Enterprise. And he's, at one point, he's got reading glasses, that he's wearing. Bones gives him reading glasses at the beginning. It's a really great scene of McCoy and Kirk in his in his quarters. I think that's number 16, Katie, where Kirk is actually in his living quarters, and McCoy comes, and they have Romulan ale together, and basically McCoy is saying, you know, is encouraging Kirk, get back your command. He says, get back your command before you really do grow old. A little note here, that skyline you see in the background, that actually, they reused that from the Towering Inferno. For those who have seen the Towering Inferno, that's the skyline that they of San Francisco that they actually used for the Towering Inferno. So they used it in this movie, and you can't see it in this photo because William Shatner's standing right in front of it. But they put up other towers that are supposed to be like other futuristic skyscrapers in the foreground to kind of create that. But I thought, what an incredible use of material that they already had as they were making this film. But a great scene there between Kirk and McCoy, and Kirk is feeling old. McCoy's encouraging him to get his command back, and that's exactly what winds up happening. Then we kind of jump forward here to photo number 7. Katie, where they're taking and they've already, Kirk has come on board and he's met the trainee crew, and this is all the training crews are going out on a training cruise. And as Saavik is taking the ship out, McCoy turns to Kirk and says, "Would you like a tranquilizer?" And he shakes his head. It's really a great scene between the two of them. And there you get a shot of all of them standing, and that's where Kirk and McCoy in the back. Where McCoy asks him if he wants a tranquilizer. There's a lot of great humor in that, and it comes from the characters. Even Kirk a few times, which is, I don't think he tends to be a pretty heavy character. William Shatner is that kind of actor, is a pretty heavy kind of, and Nicholas Meyer, I thought, did a really good job of bringing that out. One of the things that I really, really enjoyed. The also, let's see where I'm at here. Photo number 9, Katie. And I think that's that may be where we're. All right.
Nope.
I can't. Which? Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's Kirk going through. He and Scotty trade some great lines there. Overdose of shore leave, McCoy says, that Scotty has. We also, shortly when Kirk is running the, as he's doing the inspection, he meets a character that is supposed to be Scotty's nephew. That, unfortunately, all the lines where that gets mentioned got cut from the movie. And it's unfortunate because there's a scene later on where Scotty's nephew has been severely wounded in engineering, trying to save other crew people. And Scotty brings his body up to the bridge, bloodied. And you have no idea who this guy is. You know, Scotty's kind of crying. You know, you go to sick bay, and, you know, Scotty's crying over it, and none of that made sense. And Nicholas Meyer says the studio executives forced him to cut a lot of that stuff out of the film, which is unfortunate because it really grounded Scotty. It made it was a great relationship between the two of them. And when Scotty shows up with his bloody body at the bridge and he's crying down in the sick bay, you really don't understand what's going on. But it's a great scene. Also, we've got some great photo number 3, Katie. Photo number 3. What's happened is KHAAAN has taken control of another Federation starship, the USS Reliant, and he is now he's setting Kirk up. He wants revenge. Khan wants revenge for being left behind on this planet. And little Kirk has no idea that the there's been an explosion in the solar system that has shifted the orbit of SETI Alpha 5, and it laid waste to the planet. It was not the planet originally that they left them on. Kirk had no way of knowing because he never bothered to check on Khan, never bothered to check on the progress, how he was doing. So Khan now has got control of the USS Reliant, number 28, sweetheart. Number 28 is where the I think it's the yeah, that's the Enterprise being hit. The Reliant has fired phasers, and unknown to Kirk is thinks, oh, we're, as Khan says, we're all one happy fleet, and Kirk doesn't raise the shields, and it's until it's too late. By the time that Kirk is saying raise shields, Khan is already firing phasers, and they get hit pretty hard. And then photo number 25 is the Enterprise finally firing back. There's a line that Kirk said, and again, this got cut from the film, and it's unfortunate because it's in the director's edition, where after this, Kirk tells McCoy, the only reason we survived is I knew something about these ships that Khan didn't, and Kirk has made what we have really, it's the mistake of his career. We witness in this him making the mistake of his career, not following, Starfleet protocol, not doing what he should have done when he should have done it, and he really obviously comes to regret that his ship is been hit, decimated really, really badly, and he's got to come back from that. There is a we then quite a long segment where we learn what's happened at Regula 2 space station. Khan has been there. Kirk didn't. They know that he's been there, but they don't know what he's done. What he's done is he's killed most of the scientists who were there. Scientists have taken the information from Secret Project and they beamed it down, and there is a really wonderful scene then between Kirk and his not his wife, but they had a child together, and Kirk learns about it, that he has had a son, and that's a pretty big. It's one of those things that's a pretty big. As you watch that film the first time, that's a big piece of information that Kirk has got a son, and Kirk mentions this, my life that could have been and wasn't, really hitting him hard, and Kirk saying how he feels old. He says, there's a man out there I haven't seen in 15 years who's trying to kill me. He said, you show me a son who'd be happy to help him. And he said, my son, my life that could have been and wasn't. And I think a lot of us go through that. That's kind of a real thing for many of us where, this is the way our life could have been and it didn't go that way. It's a really touching scene. It's really hard to boil this movie down because there are so many great scenes. And then they get into, the Genesis cave, and we see the experiment that Carol Marcus and David Marcus, Kirk's son, have undertaken, really to create life from nothing. And they've been successful, at least in stage 2. And so they go underground to the middle of Regula in the Genesis cave. Great scene there between Kirk and Savick. She's asking Kirk what he did in the Kobayashi Maru test. And he says, Kirk's son says, well, he cheated. And he said, change the conditions of the test. Kirk said, I don't believe in the no-win scenario. Well, this whole movie, of course, winds up being the no-win scenario with what happens to Spock. But it's just so wonderful. If you haven't seen it, if you can get your hand on on the director's cut, it's a much better film. The director's cut by Nicholas Meyer makes a lot more sense than the theatrical release. There's scenes that were cut out of that I think it was a better film with those scenes in it than cut out of it. But pretty incredible space battle scenes that we see in that film, which I think are incredible. And it really showed the talent of the guys over at Industrial Light and Magic. That was the company that George Lucas started, ILM. And yeah, you see it with with the ships. I love that one. Those two ships passing closely, and you even see as Reliant goes over the hull of the Enterprise, you see its shadow passing over you get an idea of really it created I thought a lot of tension and excitement, and the scenes there. That's one from the Mutara Nebula. That's actually a promotional still that Paramount had sent out. The work that those guys did was just absolutely incredible. And I think having Industrial Light and Magic do those battle scenes and put all that together really elevated this film. There's so many things about this. Nicholas Meyer's direction, the story that they told really elevated this movie to a whole new level. And you wind up then, of course, with the death of, the battle's over, Khan's been defeated, the Enterprise wins, and you think, well, Kirk has been successful again, but no. He looks over at Spock's chair. McCoy is calling him down to engineering. Jim, you better hurry. Better get down here. He looks over at Spock's chair. Spock's chair is empty. Spock's gone. Well, and you know what's happened to Spock. We see him. He's been down in down into one of the chambers to get the engines back online. And what a wonderful scene by Leonard Nimoy. And as Katie and I had watched it, last weekend, I started tearing up again as I watched this. Because, for me, I grew up with this show. I grew up with these characters. I was in the theater in 1982 to go see Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan for the first time. I mean, these films, I was a young man when these films came out. So pretty incredible. I thought Leonard Nimoy and the way he played it was really wonderful. Just a great movie. I don't want to continue because I've talked too much already, but I really am looking forward to go and seeing that later this year when they put that back on the big screen again. Looking forward to it. Nicholas Meyer talks about the clashes that he and Gene Roddenberry had. And Meyer'S said he didn't remember talking to Roddenberry. He remembered they had just some pleasant conversations. And he didn't remember talking to Roddenberry. And then he went, he graduated from the University of Iowa, and that's where his papers are at the University of Iowa. And he said there was an exchange that they shared. He said, when asked this question before about Gene Roddenberry, my recollection was that we didn't have much interaction, he says. I was introduced to him and met him, and that was it. He said, however, some years ago, I was back in my alma mater, the University of Iowa, which is the repository of my papers, and an exhibition was set up in which, to my astonishment, were displayed a series memoranda between myself and Gene Roddenberry that went on and on about the script and his many issues with it. Gene Roddenberry hated it because for a host of reasons. Roddenberry There were a lot of things that he thought about Star Trek that Meyer disagreed with. And Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek was, we got that in Star Trek The Motion Picture, which stunk to high hell, despite a terrific director, Robert Wise. But Roddenberry's fingerprints were all over Star Trek The Motion Picture. Literally messed that up. And so Meyer was not going to allow that with Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. And so Meyer said, I was very, very surprised. The Star Trek that Gene created became, I think, ultimately a bottle into which many people subsequently poured their own vintages. He said the bottle never changed, but the various writers and directors and so forth who contributed to what people call the franchise. He said a word that I'm leery of. He's talking about the Star Trek franchise. He said they did their own thing with it. And I was perhaps the first person in that long line. And he said, and Gene was understandably, but not always correctly, distressed at the new and different vintage going into that bottle. And I think the tenor of those memoranda between us was focused on his objections to what I was doing differently. And he said, Meyer talks about this, and he said, I was not at all averse to conflict. Roddenberry didn't want any conflict. You know, Roddenberry had honestly a point of view that I think did not lend itself to making great movies, did not lend itself to telling great stories. As Star Trek went on, and he became more and more than a part of Star Trek until they had shoved him out. And that's what happened here. And Nicholas Meyer says, I did not and do not believe in the perfectibility of man. And although I think Star Trek aspiration and inter-ethnicity are all for the good, he said, I was still interested in people to me that were recognizably human, and that included being either pretty vain or having different types of emotional agendas as we have since the beginning of time. And he said, I think Gene took very grave exception to that notion. The 23rd century is a place where everybody is going to get along, and Starfleet is not a militaristic organization. Maybe it was like the Coast Guard. And he says, and I had a darker view. Well, it was, Meyer did have a darker view, and I think a much more realistic view. And it's one of the reasons why Meyer's vision of Star Trek is the one that so many fans come back to, and have watched it over and over. And I think the reason that we're going to see it released again coming up later this year. So I'm just incredibly excited about that. It is a phenomenal film. The more I learn and know about Nicholas Meyer and his thought process, he talked about, fans have asked him, if you've ever watched it, you'll notice Khan has, at one point, he's wearing two gloves. Khan takes one of the gloves off. He never takes the other glove off. He never takes it off. And people ask Nicholas Meyer, why doesn't Khan take that glove off? And Nicholas Meyer said, why do you think that Khan doesn't take the glove off? And I'm like, because he was more interested in the ideas that they came up with he said, as a director, it's not my job to answer all the questions. You supply all the answers. I'm telling a story that you supply all the answers. You tell me why you think that glove doesn't come off. And it's odd. That was one of the things that was the most hotly debated about that movie. Absolutely. You get the death of Spock, not debated at all because it was done well. And that was one of the things Nicholas Meyer said. And he, in his early conversations with Leonard Nimoy, he says, how would you like to have a fabulous death scene? And Leonard Nimoy, like any great actor, loved the sound of that. And it's a tremendous death scene that Leonard Nimoy plays. But Nicholas Meyer is just fantastic. I know I've shared a lot. I hope you find some of that interesting. I honestly, it's a great piece of cinema. I lose you over there?
Nope, still here.
Yeah. That's all I've got.
What do you have for a rundown this week on news?
I do have a rundown, and I got the rundown. We always keep this short, and I will steer you to our Twitter page because I have moved stories on all of these things. Have you heard about the Munsters? Rob Zombie is making the Munsters. And I got to tell you, I'm excited about this. Rob Zombie and the Munsters. I've seen some photos. Word came out recently that Cassandra Peterson is the latest to join the cast of the Munsters. Many don't know who Cassandra Peterson is. Ever heard of Elvira, the Mistress of the Dark? That's Cassandra Peterson. So she's going to be Rob Zombie's The Munsters. Also, CBS has cast Paul Wesley to star as the new James T. Kirk in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Movie Web asked a question if the new Alien TV series, they said, should Alien bring back Ripley? And I thought, I'd welcome your thoughts as to that. Should they, in this Alien series they're doing, bring back Ripley? So I'd welcome your thoughts and your comments. Please comment. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm kind of torn one way or another. I liked Sigourney Weaver and Ripley.
She was terrific. I just felt like they ruined that character in Alien 3 and Alien 4. I mean, talk about making sequels that really for no purpose other than we want to get the cash machine running.
Well, and that's why we talked about it last week. Sometimes you just got to leave well enough alone.
Yeah, I think so too. Also, Star Trek Picard had a great scene recently where they do, the Star Trek fans, where they do the slingshot maneuver. They're going to try go back in time. They're taking their ship around the sun. And I'm like, oh, that was so great. And the rest of that episode just was absolutely awful. It was terrible. Honestly, I started watching Picard again yesterday. I just can't finish it. I mean, it's bad. I just don't like it. Not good. Also, did you hear that Stacey Abrams is making an appearance as the president of United Earth on Star Trek's Discovery? Remember Stacey Abrams, Georgia? If I don't want to get too political, so I'll be careful. And then the Batman is actually going to be coming to HBO Max on April 19th. So we're going to be seeing that fairly quickly. Movie Web, Mobius star Jared Leto says that he hopes to see a crossover with Tom Hardy's Venom. Now that would be interesting. Tom Hardy is terrific. I'm not a big Jared Leto fan. At least I was not of his presentation of the Joker. It was terrible. It was awful. I hope he is going to do something more exciting and fun with Morbius. Looking forward to that. So that would be something I would welcome. And that's the rundown for this week.
The Cave of Wonders. Cave of Wonders?
The Cave of Wonders. So we've gotten the Cave of Wonders this week. I bought recently some of the DC Multiverse figures. These are made by McFarlane Toys for the Batman. And I bought a couple of, I've got two different figures of the Batman, one of the Riddler and one of the Penguin. And I love each of them. I thought the McFarlane Toys just really does a remarkable job on the figures that they've got. I think they've, some of it's difficult. It's like some of these, I've got some great figures that were made previously, and now they're remaking them. I had promised myself I wasn't going to buy any more figures. And then they came out with some really sensational ones for the Batman. So I picked them up. And I like both of those. You got one with Batman with his mask on, one with his mask off, and then the dark makeup around his eyes. Yeah, the Penguin, the Riddler with the scraper that the plays a piece in the movie. The Penguin, who I thought was terrific. I just absolutely loved the Penguin in the Batman. So that's from the Cave of Wonders this week. I thought you had something.
Nope, I'm good.
I thought you had a question you were gonna.
No,
All
not
right.
this week.
Oh, we're done.
We're done.
All right. Well, thank you so much for letting us join you. I appreciate it. We'll see you again then. We ask you to please follow us on Twitter. You can watch the show also on YouTube and where else?
YouTube, Facebook, and then we podcast the audio for this show on Spotify.
Thank you so much for letting us join you. We'll see you next week. We're gonna make our move to Tuesday nights. We talked about that.
It's in the works.
We'll let you know. We'll move that information on Twitter. Otherwise, so long until next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.